I should have known when she stopped lighting incense at the temple, when her hands got too soft for someone who sold flowers all day. But I was 62, lonely, and stupid enough to believe that love could find me in a place like Pattaya. What no one tells you about bar girls is that some of them aren't bar girls at all. That line came from a man who emailed us this story after sitting with it for years. He said he didn't even tell his family, just held it in. Said the shame felt like rust under the skin. And I get it. I think a lot of us do. These places can trick you into thinking you're starting over when really you're just walking into someone else's plan. If you've ever looked at someone and realized too late that you were just a chapter in their hustle, not the story they told you, you'll understand why this one hit so hard. If you've been through anything like this, or even felt the edge of it, share it in the comments. You'd be surprised how many of us are out here carrying the same weight. And look, if stories like this help you feel less alone, or you just want to keep them coming, there's a little heart button under the video where you can chip in with super thanks. It means a lot to the people who send these in, and to us too. This story isn't about revenge or closure, it's just what happened, the way he remembers it. So now, I'll share it with you the same way he shared it with me. Quietly, honestly. And maybe, just maybe, it'll help someone else catch the signs a little sooner. I never meant to fall for anyone in Thailand. After my divorce back in Ohio, I just wanted peace. 6 months of remote tech support work from my Pattaya apartment, helping Americans fix their computers from half a world away. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was fixing everyone else's problems while running from my own. Every morning I'd walk to Wat Chai Mongkol Temple, not because I was religious, but because it was quiet. Away from the chaos of Walking Street, away from the noise that reminded me why I'd left everything behind. That's where I first saw Malay. She was sitting cross-legged on a woven mat, arranging lotus flowers and incense sticks in perfect little rows. Her hands moved with this careful precision, like she was performing a ritual instead of just selling to tourists. Most of the other vendors would shout at foreigners, wave their products around, but she just smiled, this soft, genuine smile that made me stop walking. "You want flowers for Buddha?" she asked in broken English, looking up at me with these dark eyes that seemed too wise for someone so young. I didn't need flowers. I didn't even believe in Buddha. But something about her voice, the way she said it like she actually cared about my spiritual well-being, made me nod. "Sure, how much?" 40 baht, she said, carefully selecting the prettiest lotus. "You make wish. Buddha, listen." I handed her the money, our fingers brushing for just a second. Her hands were rough, calloused from work, but gentle. "What should I wish for?" She tilted her head, studying my face like she was trying to read something written there. "You look sad, Kun. Maybe wish for happiness?" The way she said it, without pity or judgment, just this simple observation, hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how obvious my misery was. "Maybe I will." I took the flowers inside, went through the motions of the offering, but my mind was back outside with the girl who'd noticed my sadness. When I came back out, she was helping an elderly Thai woman arrange her display. "You come back tomorrow?" she asked when she saw me. "Maybe," I said, but I was already planning to. The next morning, I found myself walking to the temple again. She was there, in the same spot, with the same gentle smile. This time she had jasmine garlands too, strung together with green thread. "You come back?" she said, and there was something almost surprised in her voice, like she hadn't expected me to keep my word. I said, "Maybe," I replied, but I was smiling too. "I'm Glenn, by the way." "Malay," she said, pressing her palms together in a Y. "Nice to meet you, Kun Glenn." The way she said my name with that soft accent made it sound like something precious. We started talking, small things at first. Where I was from, how long I'd been in Thailand, what I did for work. She listened to every word like it mattered, asked questions about America like she was genuinely curious, not just making conversation. "You have family in America?" she asked one morning after I'd been coming for about a week. Had a wife, I said, the words coming easier than they had in months. She left me for someone younger. Said I was boring. Malay's face softened with sympathy. I'm sorry, Kun. That must hurt very much. Yeah, I said, surprised by how much I wanted to tell her everything. It did. She nodded like she understood, like she'd felt that kind of pain before. My father died when I was 15, she said quietly. I know about losing people. There was something about the way she shared that, matching my vulnerability with her own, that made me want to keep coming back. Not just for the flowers, but for her. For the way she made me feel like my story mattered. Like I wasn't just another lonely foreign man in a place full of them. You work here every day? I asked. Every day? She confirmed. My family need money. I sell flowers, help tourists find Buddha's blessing. The way she said it, so matter-of-fact about her struggle, made me respect her even more. Here was someone who'd lost her father, who worked every day to support her family, and she still had time to notice a sad old American and treat him with kindness. That morning, I bought 3 lotus flowers instead of 1. Not because I needed them, but because I wanted to help. Because for the first time in months, I'd met someone who made me feel less alone. Thank you, Kun Glenn, she said, counting out my change. You have good heart. I walked away thinking about those words, about how long it had been since someone had said anything like that to me. My ex-wife had spent our last year together, pointing out everything wrong with me, everything I wasn't. But this girl, this stranger, saw something good. Maybe that should have been my first warning. Maybe I should have asked myself why a 20-something Thai woman would be so interested in a 62-year-old divorced man's problems. But I was too starved for kindness to question it. Too grateful for someone who looked at me like I was worth looking at. I started planning my mornings around those temple visits. Started looking forward to them in a way I hadn't looked forward to anything in years. And Malay seemed to look forward to them too. Always having my usual lotus ready, always asking about my day, always listening like she cared. I told myself it was just friendship. Just a nice routine with a kind, local person. But deep down, I was already hoping for more. Already wondering if maybe, just maybe, I could find something real in this place I'd come to hide from real life. After 3 weeks of daily flower purchases, I finally worked up the courage to ask her what I'd been thinking about every morning. Malay, would you like to get coffee sometime? When you're not working? She looked up from her flowers, surprised. For a moment I thought she might say no, and I prepared myself for the gentle rejection I probably deserved. Then she smiled. But it was different this time. Shy, almost nervous. I don't know, Kun. I have to work, take care of my family. What about after work? Just for an hour, I said, trying not to sound desperate. There's a nice cafe near the temple. Very quiet. She was quiet for a long moment, arranging and rearranging the same lotus flowers. My mother very sick, she said finally. I send money to Aizen province every week. She need medicine, treatment. I cannot spend time. I understand, I said quickly. Family comes first. But something in her expression made me pause. She looked so worried, so burdened. This girl who'd been nothing but kind to me was carrying weight I hadn't even realized. How sick is she? I asked gently. Molly's eyes filled with tears. Doctors say she need operation, very expensive. I save money, but... She shook her head. Maybe too late. Without thinking, I reached for my wallet. How much does she need? No, Kun, she said quickly, waving her hands. I cannot take your money. You already buy flowers every day. How much? I asked again, more firmly this time. She looked down at her hands. 20,000 baht, but I cannot ask you. You're not asking. I'm offering. I pulled out my debit card. There's an ATM right around the corner. Let me help. The tears spilled over then, and she pressed her palms together in a Y. Kun Glenn, you too kind. I don't know how to thank you. Have coffee with me, I said. That's thanks enough. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a small cafe, and I was watching her count the money with shaking hands. She called someone on her phone, speaking rapid Thai, and I caught the word mama several times. When she hung up, she was crying again. "She's so happy," Malay said. "She say you like angel sent from Buddha." Something warm spread through my chest. When was the last time I'd made someone this happy? When was the last time I'd felt this useful, this needed? "Tell me about her," I said, and Malay's face lit up. For the next hour she told me about her mother, her younger brother still in school, their small farm in Eisen that barely produced enough rice to survive. She spoke about her father's death from cancer, how she'd had to leave school at 15 to work, how she'd ended up in Pattaya selling flowers because it was the only way to make enough money. "I have dream," she said, stirring her coffee. "I want to learn English properly, maybe study tourism. Help people visit Thailand, show them real culture, not just." She gestured vaguely in the direction of Walking Street. "Not just the bars," I finished, and she nodded. "You understand," she said, and there was something grateful in her voice. "Most foreign man, they think Thai girl only good for one thing, but I want to be more." I believed her. Looking at her sitting there, talking about her dreams with such earnest hope, I believed every word. She was different from what I'd expected to find in a place like Pattaya. She was real. "I could help you with English," I said. "If you want. I'm not a teacher, but I'm patient." Her eyes widened. "You would do that?" "Sure. I work from home, I have time, we could meet a few times a week." She reached across the table and covered my hand with both of hers. "Kun Glenn, why you so good to me?" I looked down at our hands, hers so small and warm on mine. "Because you're good to me too." That's when she did it. That's when she took my hand and held it properly, fingers intertwined, and looked at me with those dark eyes like I was something precious. "I never meet man like you," she said softly. "So kind, so gentle." My heart started beating faster. "Malay, in Thailand we say krang jai. It mean to be considerate, to think of others before yourself. You have krang jai, kun. Very rare." The way she was looking at me, the way she was holding my hand, made me feel things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. Not just attraction, but something deeper. Like maybe I wasn't done with love after all. "Can I ask you something?" I said. She nodded. Are we? I mean, I don't want to assume anything, but..." She squeezed my hand. "You want to know if I like you?" "Yeah," I said, feeling like a teenager. She was quiet for a moment then. "I like you very much, Glenn, but I scared." "Scared of what?" "You American man, I Thai girl. People think bad things, and I never have. I never have Farang boyfriend before." "I don't care what people think," I said, meaning it. "And I've never had a Thai girlfriend before either." She laughed, a sound like water over stones. "Maybe we both learn together?" I lifted her hand to my lips and kissed it gently. "I'd like that very much." We talked until the cafe was ready to close, and I walked her back to her small apartment building. At the door, she turned to me. "Thank you, Glenn, for my mother, for coffee, for seeing me." "Thank you for letting me see you," I said. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed my cheek, her lips soft and warm. "I see you tomorrow, at Temple?" "Wouldn't miss it," I said, and I meant it. Walking back to my apartment, I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd helped someone who needed help. I'd connected with someone who seemed to really understand me. And maybe, just maybe, I'd found something that could turn into love. I should have questioned why she'd shared her family's problems so quickly with a stranger. Should have wondered if the timing of her mother's illness was just a little too convenient. But I was too happy to ask those questions. Too grateful to have someone who looked at me like I mattered. That night, I called my sister in Ohio for the first time in months. "I think I'm falling for someone," I told her. "Already?" she said, and I could hear the worry in her voice. "Glenn, be careful. You're in a vulnerable place." "I am being careful." I said. She's different, Sue. She's special. I was so sure I was right. So sure that what I was feeling was real. That what she was showing me was real. It would be months before I understood that the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. Glenn, what this word mean? Malay pointed to a page in the English textbook I'd bought her, but she was sitting so close to me on my couch that I could smell her shampoo. Something floral and sweet that made it hard to concentrate. Ambition? I read. It means having a strong desire to achieve something. Ah, she said, writing it down carefully. Like my ambition to speak English good? Speak English well, I corrected gently, and she laughed. See? I need more practice. It had been 2 weeks since our coffee date, and she'd been coming to my apartment 3 times a week for English lessons. But if I'm being honest, we didn't spend much time on grammar. She was a quick learner, picking up new words and phrases faster than I expected, but our sessions always turned into long conversations about life. Tell me about your marriage, she said one evening, closing the textbook and curling up against my side like it was the most natural thing in the world. Why do you want to know about that? I asked, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. I want to understand you, she said simply. What make you happy? What make you sad? She paused, looking up at me. If we try to be together, I should know about your past. The way she said, if we try to be together, made my heart skip. We'd been dancing around the idea of a real relationship for weeks, but neither of us had said it out loud. We were married for 22 years, I said, surprised by how easy it was to talk about with her. Met in college. Thought we wanted the same things. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being partners and started being strangers. She hurt you very much, Malay said, tracing patterns on my chest with her finger. Yeah, she did. I never hurt you like that, she said quietly. I promise. Something in her voice, so earnest and vulnerable, made me believe her completely. I know you wouldn't. She tilted her head up to look at me. Glenn, can I ask you something? Anything. My brother, he need money for school uniform, books. Only 3,000 baht, but I already send everything to Mama this month. She bit her lip. I hate to ask, but... Of course, I said immediately. Whatever he needs. You sure? I feel bad, always asking for money. Hey, I said, tilting her chin up, so she had to look at me. That's what people do for each other. They help. She kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I felt like I was drowning in the best possible way. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. I'm falling in love with you, Glenn, she whispered. I'm falling in love with you too, I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. That night, she stayed over for the first time. We made love slowly, tenderly, and afterward she curled up against me and told me about her childhood. About helping her father in the rice fields before he got sick, about the day she realized she'd have to leave school to work, about how lonely she'd been before she met me. I never feel safe like this, she said, her voice drowsy. Never feel like someone really care about me. I care about you, I said, kissing the top of her head. More than I've cared about anyone in a long time. You save me, Glenn, she murmured. From loneliness, from worry about money, from everything. I held her tighter, feeling like the luckiest man alive. Here was this beautiful, genuine woman who saw something worth saving in me, who trusted me with her body, her heart, her fears. The next morning she was gone when I woke up, but there was a note on my pillow. Thank you for beautiful night. See you at temple. Love, Malay. I started giving her money regularly after that, not just for emergencies, but a monthly allowance so she wouldn't have to worry about supporting her family. When she protested, I told her it was an investment in our future. You don't have to sell flowers anymore, I said. You can focus on learning English, maybe take a computer class. What about temple? She asked. I've been there so long, other vendors like family. You can still visit, I said, but you don't have to work there every day. She moved to an apartment closer to mine, to make the English lessons easier, she said. I helped her pay the deposit, bought her a new phone, took her shopping for clothes. She was always grateful, always careful to thank me, always insisting she didn't deserve such kindness. You deserve everything good, I told her one evening as we walked along the beach. You're the most caring person I've ever met. I try to be a good person, she said, leaning against me. My father always say, Malay, you treat people with respect. They treat you with respect. He sounds like a wise man. He was. I think he would like you very much. She talked about her father often, about the lessons he'd taught her, about how he'd made her promise to take care of the family. It made me respect her even more, knowing she was honoring his memory by sacrificing her own dreams for her mother and brother. I have idea, she said one night after we'd made love. Maybe I can work part-time at hotel, practice English with tourists. What you think? I think that's a great idea, I said. But you don't have to work if you don't want to. I make enough to support us both. I want to work, she said firmly. I want to contribute, not just take. That's when I knew for sure that I loved her. Not just her beauty or her sweetness, but her integrity. Her refusal to be completely dependent on me, her desire to build something of her own. Malay, I said, stroking her hair. I love you. I love you too, Glenn, she said, and the way she said it with such quiet certainty made me believe that maybe I'd finally found my person. Maybe all the pain of my divorce, all the loneliness and self-doubt had been leading me to this moment, to this woman who saw me as someone worth loving. I started thinking about the future then, about maybe bringing her to America, about marriage, about having a real life together. She was young enough to start over, smart enough to succeed anywhere. I could give her opportunities she'd never have otherwise, and she could give me the companionship I'd been missing. What you thinking about? She asked, noticing my distant expression. Just us, I said. Our future. She smiled, that same gentle smile that had caught my attention at the temple. I like thinking about future with you. Even though I'm old? You not old, she said, kissing my chest. You just experienced. You know what important in life. I believed her. I believed all of it. The love, the gratitude, the vision of a future together. I believed it because I wanted to, because I needed to, because it felt like the answer to all the questions I'd been asking myself about what came next. Looking back, I can see how naive I was, how desperate to be needed, to be loved, to matter to someone. I can see the red flags I ignored, the questions I didn't ask, the assumptions I made. But in that moment, lying in bed with Molly in my arms, I felt like I'd finally gotten something right. I felt like I'd found my happy ending. Glenn, I think maybe we should get married, Molly said one morning over breakfast, her voice casual like she was discussing the weather. I nearly choked on my coffee. We'd been together for 3 months, and while I'd been thinking about marriage, hearing her say it out loud made my heart race. Really? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Why not? She said, buttering her toast. I love you, you love me. We already live like married couple. That's true, I said, but something about the way she brought it up felt strange. Too sudden, too practical. My friend Ploy, she married American man last month. Now she have green card, can bring her family to visit America. She looked at me hopefully. Maybe we can do same thing? There it was, the reason behind the suggestion. Not because she was overcome with love, but because she'd been talking to her friend about visa benefits. Is that why you want to marry me? I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. For the visa? Her face fell. No, Glenn, I love you, but also, if we married, I can help my family more. Maybe bring Mama to America for better medical care. She had a point. Her mother's health had been declining despite the money I'd sent for treatments. Maybe American health care really could help her. We don't have to rush, I said carefully. We can take our time, make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. Of course, she said, but I caught something in her expression. Disappointment? Impatience? It was gone so quickly I wasn't sure I'd seen it at all. That afternoon, her phone started buzzing during one of our English lessons. She glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. Important? I asked. Just friend, she said, but she seemed distracted for the rest of the session. When it buzzed again, she excused herself to the bathroom to take the call. I could hear her voice through the door, speaking rapid Thai, but the tone was different. Sharp, almost angry. When she came back, she was all smiles again. Sorry, Hun. My cousin, she have problem with boyfriend. Everything okay? Yes, just drama. You know how girls are. She laughed, but it sounded forced. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things. Small things that individually meant nothing, but together painted a picture I didn't want to see. Her English was improving faster than seemed possible for someone who'd had minimal education. She'd gone from broken sentences to complex conversations in just a few months. When I complimented her on her progress, she brushed it off. "I good student," she said. "I listened to English TV, practice with neighbors." But I'd never seen her watch English TV, and I'd never met any of these neighbors she supposedly practiced with. She knew things about Pattaya that a temple flower seller shouldn't know. Brand names, nightlife areas, tourist scams. When I asked her about it, she always had explanations. I work at temple, I see everything. Tourists tell me about bad places, I learn to warn other people. It made sense. But something about the way she said it felt rehearsed. One day, I decided to surprise her at the temple. I'd been there every morning for months, but I'd never seen her actually selling flowers to anyone else. I wanted to see her in action, to watch her spread the same kindness to other tourists that she'd shown me. When I arrived, she wasn't there. Her usual spot was occupied by an elderly Thai woman I'd never seen before. "Excuse me," I said in my broken Thai. "Where is Malay?" The woman looked confused. "Malay? Who is Malay?" "The young woman who sells flowers here every morning. Long hair, very pretty." The woman shook her head. "No one named Malay work here. Only me. Only my sister." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "But she's been here for months. She sits right there." "Maybe you confused, Kun? Maybe different temple?" I wasn't confused. I'd been coming to this exact spot every morning for months. I'd watched Molly arrange flowers in this exact location, had bought lotus blooms from her hand dozens of times. When I confronted her that evening, she laughed it off. "Oh, I not work there anymore, remember? I quit when you start giving me allowance. That old woman, she probably knew. She not know me. But she said no one named Mali had ever worked there. Maybe she not speak English well, get confused." Mali shrugged. "Or maybe she jealous. Thai women can be very petty." It was a reasonable explanation, but something about it didn't sit right with me. I'd been to that temple dozens of times, talked to other vendors. Why hadn't I ever seen this woman before? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Malay, watching her breathe, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the doubts creeping into my mind. Her hands were softer than they'd been when I first met her. Much softer. When I'd ask about it, she'd said it was because she wasn't handling flowers and incense all day anymore. But even when she was working at the temple, her hands had been surprisingly smooth for someone who did manual labor. Her nails were always perfectly manicured now, painted with little designs that must have cost a fortune at the salon. When I'd offered to pay for them, she'd said her friend did them for free. But I'd never met this friend, never seen her get them done. She never smelled like incense anymore. In fact, thinking back, I wasn't sure she'd ever smelled like incense. Even that first day at the temple, she'd smelled like soap and perfume, not like someone who'd been burning incense all morning. "Glenn?" Her voice was soft in the darkness. "You awake?" "Yeah," I said, just thinking. "About what?" I could have asked her then, could have voiced my doubts, demanded real answers. Instead, I rolled over and pulled her close. About how lucky I am, I said. She sighed contentedly and snuggled against me. I lucky too. I love you so much, Glenn. I love you too, I said, and I meant it. Despite the doubts, despite the questions, I loved her. Maybe that was enough. Maybe I was overthinking things, letting my past hurt make me suspicious of something good. But as I held her in the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important, that the woman in my arms wasn't quite who I thought she was. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my ex-wife's betrayal had made me question everyone, even someone as sweet and genuine as Malay. I told myself that love required trust, and I needed to choose to trust her. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I was starting to realize that maybe I didn't know her at all. Maybe the woman I'd fallen in love with at the temple had been just as much of a performance as her broken English and her rough working hands. Maybe I'd been falling in love with a lie. I had it all planned out. Dinner at the nicest restaurant in Pattaya, a walk along the beach, and then back to my apartment where I'd get down on one knee and ask Malay to marry me. I'd bought the ring 2 days earlier, a simple diamond solitaire that had cost me 3 months of savings, but I didn't care. She was worth it. You seem nervous tonight, Malay said as we finished our meal. Everything okay? Perfect, I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. I have something I want to ask you later. Her eyes lit up. Something good? I hope so, I said, and she squeezed my hand. We were supposed to go back to my place after dinner, but Malay said she needed to stop by her apartment first to change clothes. I want to look beautiful for whatever you want to ask me, she said with a smile that made my heart skip. You're always beautiful, I said, meaning it. Give me 1 hour, she said, kissing my cheek. Then come pick me up. I went home and paced my apartment, the ring box burning a hole in my pocket. I rehearsed what I'd say, imagined her reaction, pictured our life together. By the time an hour had passed, I was practically vibrating with nervous energy. I arrived at her building and knocked on her door. No answer. I knocked again, then tried calling her phone. Straight to voicemail. Maybe she's in the shower, I told myself, but something felt wrong. I'd never known Malay to be late or to not answer her phone. I was about to leave when I heard voices in the hallway. 2 middle-aged Thai women were talking in hushed tones, and I caught the word farong several times. One of them noticed me and approached. You looking for girl in 302? She asked in broken English. Yes, Malay. Do you know where she is? The woman exchanged a glance with her friend. She leave 1 hour ago, dressed very. She made a gesture with her hands, indicating a short skirt. Dressed how? Like bar girl, the other woman said bluntly. Short skirt, too much makeup. She get in taxi, go to Walking Street. My blood went cold. That's impossible. She doesn't go to Walking Street. The first woman shrugged. I see what I see. She go there many times, always at night. You must be mistaken, I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. Maybe you ask her yourself, the woman said, not unkindly, but I tell you truth. I stood there for a long moment, the ring box heavy in my pocket. Then, without really deciding to, I found myself walking toward the main road, hailing a taxi. Walking Street, I told the driver. The neon lights and pounding music of Pattaya's red light district hit me like a physical blow. I'd avoided this area for months, disgusted by the obvious transactions, the hollow-eyed girls dancing for drunk tourists. This wasn't the Thailand I'd come to find peace in. I walked slowly down the crowded street, scanning the faces, telling myself I was being ridiculous. Malay wouldn't be here. She couldn't be here. She was probably back at her apartment by now, wondering where I was. Then I saw her. She was standing in the doorway of a go-go bar called Silk, wearing a tight black dress that barely covered her thighs and makeup, so heavy it transformed her face. She was laughing with a bouncer, her body language completely different from the shy, modest woman I knew. This version of Malay was confident, even predatory. I stopped walking, people flowing around me like water around a stone. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. This couldn't be my Malay. This couldn't be the woman who'd cried when I offered to help her sick mother, who'd held my hand so shyly in the cafe. Then she turned, and our eyes met across the crowded street. The color drained from her face. For a moment we just stared at each other, separated by 50 feet and what felt like an entire universe of deception. She said something to the bouncer and started walking toward me, but I was already moving. I pushed through the crowd, my mind screaming with questions I wasn't ready to hear, answered, "Glenn?" Her voice behind me, high and panicked. "Glenn, wait." I kept walking, but she caught up with me, grabbing my arm. "Please, let me explain." I turned around, and up close, she looked like a stranger. The makeup, the dress, the way she was standing, nothing about her was familiar. "Explain what?" I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "It's not what you think," she said, and tears were starting to smudge her mascara. "Please, can we go somewhere private?" "Not what I think?" I looked back at the bar, at the sign advertising beautiful Thai girls, at the men streaming in and out like it was a convenience store. "What exactly am I thinking, Malay?" I work there sometimes," she said, the words barely a whisper. "But only when I really need money. Only when—" "You work there." The words felt like glass in my mouth. "You work in a go bar." "Not like what you think," she said quickly. "I just serve drinks, talk to customers. I never do anything else, I swear." "How long?" She looked down at her feet. "What? How long have you been working there?" Just sometimes. When Mama need extra money for medicine." "How long?" "6 months," she whispered. 6 months. The same 6 months I'd been giving her money every month, enough to support her family twice over. The same 6 months she'd been coming to my apartment for English lessons, sleeping in my bed, telling me she loved me. "While we've been together," I said, and it wasn't a question. She nodded, still not looking at me. "The whole time?" Another nod. I felt something break inside me, something I hadn't even known was holding me together. "The temple, the flowers, your sick mother, all of it?" "My mother is sick," she said quickly, looking up at me with desperate eyes. "That part is true, and I do love you, Glenn. Everything I said about loving you is true. But you work in a go-go bar, just to make extra money. The money you give me, it helps, but it's not enough for everything. Mama's medicine is so expensive, and my brother—" "Stop." The word came out harder than I intended. "Just stop." She started crying then, real tears that cut tracks through her makeup. "Glenn, please, I can explain everything. I can quit tonight, right now. I never have to go back there." I looked at her standing there in her bar girl outfit, crying and pleading, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. Not just because of the clothes or the makeup, but because everything I thought I knew about her was disintegrating. "How many others?" I asked. "What? How many other men like me? How many other lonely foreigners do you have?" "None," she said quickly. "Only you. I swear, only you. Don't lie to me anymore, Molly. Please. I can't take any more lies." She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, deciding how much truth she could afford to tell me. "There was one other man," she said finally. "But it's over. It's been over for weeks." "Because of me?" "Because I fell in love with you," she said, and the way she said it with such conviction almost made me believe her. Almost. "I need to go," I said, turning away from her. "Glenn, wait." She grabbed my arm again. "Come back to my apartment. Let me change clothes. Let me explain properly." "Please." I looked down at her hand on my arm, at the perfectly manicured nails that had never touched temple flowers or incense. "Why should I believe anything you say now? Because I love you?" she said simply. "Because everything between us, all the feelings, all the time we spent together, that was real. The work, the bar, that's just survival. But what we have is real." I wanted to believe her. God, how badly I wanted to believe her. She was crying, she was pleading, and part of me just wanted to take her home and pretend I'd never seen her in that doorway. Okay, I said finally. Let's go back to your place. You can explain. The relief on her face was so obvious, so genuine, that for a moment I thought maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe this really was just about money, about survival. Maybe the love between us really was real. We rode back to her apartment in silence, her hand in mine, both of us lost in our own thoughts. I kept looking at her profile in the taxi's dim light, trying to reconcile this woman with the one I'd fallen in love with at the temple. When we got to her apartment, she immediately went to the bathroom to wash off her makeup and change clothes. When she came back out, she was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, her face clean, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked like my Malay again. Better? She asked hopefully. You look like yourself, I said, and she sat down next to me on her small couch. I am myself, she said, taking my hands. This is who I really am. The other thing, the bar, that's just a costume, just a job. Tell me everything, I said, from the beginning. No more lies. She took a deep breath. I started working at Silk 4 months before I met you. My mother really was sick, really did need money for treatment. I tried other jobs, restaurant, shop, hotel, but they don't pay enough. Bar work pays well, and I'm good at it. What does good at it mean? I can make men spend money, she said simply. I can make them feel special, important. I can make them think they're different from all the other customers. The way she said it, so matter of fact, made my stomach turn. Like you did with me. No, she said quickly. With you it was different. With you it became real. When? When did it become real? What changed? She was quiet for a moment, thinking, the day you paid for my mother's medicine. The way you did it, without asking for anything back, without making me feel ashamed. No customer had ever done that. Customer, the word tasted bitter. Is that what I was? At first, she admitted, and at least she was being honest. But then I got to know you. Your kindness, your loneliness, the way you talked about your ex-wife. You were so different from the other men. What other men, Molly? You said there was only one. She looked down. There were others, but they were just customers. You became something more. How many others? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. 3, she said quietly. 3 men I saw regularly. 3. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. While I'd been falling in love with her, while I'd been planning our future together, she'd been seeing 3 other men. Are you still seeing them? No. I stopped when we became serious. When was that exactly? Because I thought we were serious from the beginning. When you asked me to move closer to your apartment, that's when I knew you wanted something real. I tried to process this timeline. She'd been juggling multiple relationships, multiple sources of income, while telling each of us that we were special. The phone calls? I said suddenly. The ones you take in the bathroom. Are those them? She nodded reluctantly. Sometimes they call. I tell them I'm busy, that I can't see them anymore. But they don't always accept it easily. And the temple? Did you ever actually work at the temple? She shook her head. I watched that spot for weeks, learned the routine. I knew the kind of man who went there lonely, spiritual, looking for meaning. I knew if I positioned myself there, I could meet someone like you. Each revelation hit me like a physical blow. The temple, the flowers, her shy smile, all of it had been calculated. She'd studied me before I'd even known she existed. So none of it was real, I said. The feelings became real, she insisted. I might have approached you for business, but I fell in love with you for real. How do I know that? How do I know anything you're telling me now is true? She was crying again, but quietly this time. You don't. You have to choose to believe me. I looked around her apartment, really looked at it for the first time. It was nicer than I'd realized, with expensive electronics and brand-name clothes in the closet. Too nice for someone who supposedly lived hand to mouth. The money I've been giving you, I said, where does it really go? Some to my mother, she said, but also to rent, to clothes, to makeup, to maintaining the life I need to do this work. To other men, to survival, she said firmly. This is how I survive, Glenn. This is how women like me survive in a place like this. I understood then finally. I wasn't her boyfriend. I wasn't even her customer. I was her business plan, a steady source of income that allowed her to maintain the lifestyle she needed to attract other customers. I need to go, I said, standing up. Glenn, please. I love you. I know this is hard to understand, but I really do love you. Maybe you do, I said, but I don't know what that means anymore. I walked to the door, my hand on the knob, when she said the thing that broke me completely. I'll quit, she said desperately. I'll quit everything, give up all the other men, work only normal jobs. We can get married like we planned. I'll be only yours. I turned back to look at her, and for a moment I saw not the confident bar girl or the innocent temple flower seller, but just a young woman who was terrified of losing her security. The marriage? I said slowly. That was about the visa, wasn't it? About getting to America. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Goodbye, Molly, I said, and I walked out of her apartment for the last time. But even as I walked away, even as I felt my heart breaking with each step, part of me was already wondering if I could forgive her. If maybe we could work through this somehow. I was still hoping for a happy ending, even after everything I'd learned. That's how deep the delusion ran. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment staring at the ring box on my coffee table, trying to make sense of everything Malay had told me. Part of me wanted to throw the ring away, book a flight back to Ohio, and forget Thailand existed. But a bigger part of me kept hearing her voice saying, I love you, with tears in her eyes. By morning, I'd convinced myself that maybe this could work. Maybe love really had grown from whatever business arrangement we'd started with. People fell in love in stranger ways, didn't they? When Malay showed up at my door at 7 a.m., still in the jeans and t-shirt from the night before, I felt a surge of hope. I quit, she said before I could even say hello. I went back to Silk last night and told them I'm finished. I don't want to do that work anymore. Really? Really? She stepped into my apartment, her eyes red from crying. I want to try to make this work with you, Glenn. If you'll have me. I pulled her into my arms, and she felt so small and warm against me. I want that too. I know I hurt you, she said, her voice muffled against my chest. I know I lied, but everything I feel for you is real. No more lies, I said. If we're going to do this, no more lies. No more lies, she promised. For a few weeks it felt like we might actually be able to rebuild. Malay seemed different, more attentive, more affectionate. She spent every night at my apartment, cooked for me, helped me with my work when she could. I increased her monthly allowance so she wouldn't be tempted to go back to bar work. You don't have to give me so much, she said when I handed her the extra money. I can find normal job. I want to take care of you, I said. That's what people do when they love each other. She kissed me softly. I love you so much, Glenn. I'm going to make this right. I believed her. I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored the little voice in my head, asking why she needed so much money if she wasn't working. The first sign that something was wrong came from my neighbor, Mrs. Siraporn, an elderly Thai woman who lived across the hall. Your girlfriend? She said to me one morning as we were both checking our mail. She very busy lady. What do you mean? I see her leave at night sometimes, after you go to sleep. Come back very late. I felt that familiar cold feeling in my stomach. Maybe she was visiting friends. Mrs. Siraporn gave me a look that was equal parts pity and disapproval. Maybe, she said, but her tone suggested she didn't think so. When I confronted Malay about it, she had an explanation ready. My friend Nim, she have problems with her boyfriend. Sometimes she call me crying, ask me to come help her. I didn't want to wake you up. Which friend? I've never met any of your friends. Nim, she shy. She not comfortable around Farang men because of bad experience. It was plausible. But something about the way Malay said it felt rehearsed, like she'd been practicing the explanation. I started paying attention to her phone habits. She'd changed her passcode, and she never left it unattended anymore. When it buzzed, which it did constantly, she'd glance at it quickly and then ignore it or step away to respond. Popular girl, I said one evening after her phone had buzzed for the 10th time during dinner. Just friends, she said, not looking up from her pad. That Thai people, we text a lot. But I caught glimpses sometimes when notifications popped up. Messages in English from names like Mike and David and Peter. When I asked about them, she said they were former customers from when she worked at a restaurant. Asking about reservations. You worked at a restaurant? Before the temple, she said quickly. I told you I had other jobs. But she'd never mentioned a restaurant before. Every story about her past kept changing, growing more complex, and I was having trouble keeping track of which version was supposed to be true. One night, I couldn't sleep and went to get some water from the kitchen. Malay was in the living room, talking quietly on her phone in Thai. When she saw me, she quickly hung up. Who was that at 2 a.m, I asked. My cousin, she said. Time difference with Aizen province. I thought your cousin lived in Bangkok. Different cousin, she said. But she looked flustered. The lies were getting sloppier, more desperate. And I was starting to realize that maybe she'd never actually quit working at all. I did something I'm not proud of. I hired a private investigator. His name was Kun Prazert, a middle-aged Thai man who specialized in cases involving foreign men and their Thai girlfriends. When I told him what I needed, he just nodded like he'd heard the story 1,000 times before. Very common problem, he said in accented English. You want to know what she really doing, yes? Yes, I said, hating myself for it but needing to know. Give me 1 week. It was the longest week of my life. I went through the motions of our relationship, cooking dinner together, watching movies, making love while knowing that someone was following her, documenting her life. Malay seemed to sense something was wrong. You very quiet lately, she said one evening. You angry with me? No, I said, just tired. You work too much, she said, curling up next to me on the couch. Maybe we take vacation soon? Go to Koh Samui? Maybe, I said, but I was thinking about how she'd pay for a vacation if she really wasn't working. When Kun Prasert called me to meet him at a cafe in central Pattaya, I almost didn't go. Part of me still wanted to live in ignorance, to believe in the version of Malay who loved me and only me. But I went. I have photos, he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. I opened it with shaking hands. The first few photos showed Malay leaving my apartment building after I'd gone to sleep, dressed in the kind of clothes I'd seen her in that night at Walking Street. Then photos of her entering Silk Bar. Then photos of her with different men, foreign men, men who looked at her the way I looked at her. She never quit. Hun Prasert said matter-of-factly. She worked there 4 nights this week. I flipped through more photos. Malay laughing with a heavy-set German man. Malay holding hands with a young British guy who couldn't have been much older than she was. Malay getting into a taxi with an elderly Australian man who reminded me uncomfortably of myself. The customers? I said, my voice barely working. Are they? Some are only bar customers. But these 3, he pointed to photos of the German, the British guy, and the Australian. These ones she see regularly. Outside of bar. My worst fears confirmed. She hadn't stopped seeing other men. She'd just gotten better at hiding it. There's more, Kun Prasert said gently. He showed me photos of Malay at an upscale apartment building I didn't recognize, going in with a young Thai man on a motorcycle. Boyfriend? He said simply. Name is Somshai, motorcycle taxi driver. They together 2 years. 2 years. Before she'd met me, during our entire relationship, and apparently continuing now, I stared at the photos of them together, casual, comfortable, intimate, in a way that looked nothing like the performances I'd seen her give foreign men. The money you give her? Kun Prazer continued. Much of it goes to him. He used it to upgrade his motorcycle, rent nice apartment. I felt like I was going to be sick. All those months of supporting her family, of helping with her mother's medical bills, of giving her money so she wouldn't have to work, and she'd been using it to support her real boyfriend. Her mother? I asked. Mother is fine, lives in Bangkok, not Eisen, has jobs selling lottery tickets, not sick. Every single thing she'd told me was a lie. Her sick mother, her poor family, her need to work to survive, all lies designed to make me feel protective, generous, needed. I'm sorry, Kun Prazer said, and he genuinely looked sorry. This very common story. These girls, they very good at what they do. I paid him and walked back to my apartment in a daze. Malay was there, cooking dinner, humming a Thai pop song. She looked so normal, so domestic, so much like the woman I thought I loved. You're early, she said, smiling at me. I'm making your favorite green curry. We need to talk, I said. Something in my voice made her freeze. She turned off the stove and faced me, and I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what I might have discovered. What about? She asked carefully. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos Kun Prazer had taken. Her face went white. Glenn, I can explain. No more explanations, I said quietly. No more lies. I know about Somchai. I know about the other customers. I know your mother isn't sick. She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something change in her expression. The scared, guilty look faded, replaced by something harder, more calculating. So what? She said finally. So what if I have Thai boyfriend? So what if I still work? You think I can live on money you give me forever? You said you love me. I do love you, she said, but her voice was different now, colder. But love doesn't pay rent. Love doesn't buy food. You Farang men, you think love is enough, but you don't understand how hard life is for Thai women. You lied to me about everything. I told you what you wanted to hear, she said with a shrug. You wanted to believe you were saving me, so I let you believe it. You wanted to believe I was innocent temple girl, so I was innocent temple girl. You wanted to believe you were only one, so I let you believe that too. The casual way she said it, like my feelings were just another business consideration, hit me harder than anger would have. Did you ever love me at all? I asked. She studied my face for a moment. I loved the money you gave me. I loved the nice apartment, the fancy dinners, the security. As for you, she paused. You're kind man, Glenn, but you're old and you're lonely and you're not very exciting. Each word was like a knife, but somehow this brutal honesty felt more real than anything else she'd ever said to me. I want you to leave, I said. Fine, she said, already moving toward the bedroom to gather her things. But don't act like you're victim here. You knew what this was. Deep down, you knew. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had known on some level that a beautiful 25-year-old woman wouldn't fall in love with me for my sparkling personality. But that didn't make it hurt any less. I didn't see Malay for 2 weeks after she moved out. I threw myself into work, taking on extra shifts troubleshooting computer problems for people 8,000 miles away who had no idea their tech support agent was having a complete emotional breakdown. It was easier to focus on other people's problems than face my own. But Pattaya is a small place when you're part of the expat community. Word travels fast. So I wasn't entirely surprised when she showed up at my door on a rainy Thursday evening, soaked to the skin and crying. Glenn, please, she said when I opened the door. I need to talk to you. She looked terrible. Her hair was stringy and wet, her makeup running down her cheeks, and she was wearing clothes I'd never seen before, cheap, ill-fitting clothes that made her look younger and more vulnerable. What do you want, Malay? Can I come in? Just for a few minutes? Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. She stood in my living room, dripping on the floor, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. I missed this place, she said softly. I missed you. Did you? She turned to face me, and her eyes were red-rimmed and desperate. I made a mistake, Glenn. Huge mistake. I lost everything. What happened? Some chai? She said, and fresh tears started falling. He'd take all the money, all of it, and then he'd disappear. I felt a cold satisfaction that I immediately hated myself for. How much money? Everything you gave me. Everything I saved from bar work. Almost 200,000 baht. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. He say he invest it for us, buy new motorcycle, start business, but he just take it and run away with some other girl. 200,000 baht, about $6,000. The money I'd given her to support her supposedly sick mother, to help her family, to keep her from having to work in bars, all of it had gone to support another man who'd been using her just like she'd been using me. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Nobody deserved to be betrayed like that, even someone who'd betrayed others. The bar, they won't take me back, she continued. They say I too unreliable, disappear too much. And the other men, the customers, when I tell them I need help, they all say same thing. They say they already have new girlfriend. So you came to me, she nodded, not even trying to deny it. You always been kind to me, Glenn. Even when you angry, you still kind. What do you want? I want to come back, she said simply. I want us to try again. I stared at her, this woman who'd lied to me about everything, who'd manipulated my loneliness and kindness for months, who was now standing in my living room asking for another chance because everyone else had abandoned her. Why would I do that? Because you love me, she said, stepping closer. I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes, but I know you still love me. Do I? Yes. She reached out and touched my face with her wet hand. And I love you too. Really love you. Not like before. What's different now? Now I know what it's like to lose someone who really care about me, she said. Some chai never care about me. Not really. He just want my money. But you cared about me as person. No, I didn't, I said, and she looked surprised. I cared about who I thought you were. The temple girl, the innocent woman with the sick mother. I fell in love with a lie. But the feelings were real, she insisted. Maybe the story was fake, but the feelings became real. Maybe they had. Maybe somewhere in all the lies and manipulation, something genuine had grown. But how could I ever trust it? How could I ever look at her without wondering what was true and what was performance? I can't do this again, Malay. Please, she said, and she got down on her knees right there in my living room. I'll do anything. I'll sign papers saying I don't want your money. I'll get normal job. I'll prove to you that I change. Seeing her like that, desperate and begging, should have made me feel powerful. Instead, it made me feel sick. This wasn't love. This was desperation dressed up as love. Get up, I said. Will you think about it? Will you give me chance to prove myself? I helped her to her feet, and for a moment we stood there looking at each other. I could see the calculation behind her tears, the way she was watching my face for signs of weakness. Even now, even in her desperation, she was performing. I'll think about it, I said, because I couldn't bring myself to crush her completely. Her face lit up with hope. Really? I'll think about it, I repeated, but I can't promise anything. That's all I ask, she said, and she kissed my cheek. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for being better man than I deserve. After she left, I sat in my apartment for hours, thinking. Part of me wanted to take her back. Not because I believed she'd changed, but because being alone was so much harder than being lied to. At least when I was with her, I felt needed, important, loved even if it was fake. But I'd been down this road before, with my ex-wife. I'd ignored red flags, made excuses, chosen to believe what I wanted to believe rather than what the evidence showed me. I'd convinced myself that if I just loved her enough, was generous enough, understanding enough, she'd become the person I needed her to be. It had taken me 62 years to learn that you can't love someone into being honest. The next morning I did something I should have done weeks earlier. I booked a flight back to Ohio. But before I left, I had to see her one more time. I had to tell her my decision in person, give her the closure I'd never gotten from my ex-wife. I went to the address Kun Prasert had given me, the apartment building where she'd been staying with Somchai. But when I got there, the security guard told me she'd moved out days ago. You know where she went? I asked in my broken Thai. He shrugged. Maybe back to work. Maybe find new Farang boyfriend. I tried calling her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I checked the places I thought she might be, her old apartment, the cafe where we'd had our first date, even Silk Bar. Nothing. Finally, 3 days before my flight, I went back to Wat Chai Mongkol Temple. And there she was, sitting in the exact same spot where I'd first seen her, selling lotus flowers and incense to tourists. She was wearing simple clothes, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked like the innocent temple girl I'd fallen in love with, and for a moment my heart stopped. Then I saw her interact with a customer, an elderly German man who looked lost and lonely. I watched her give him the same shy smile she'd given me, watched her speak to him in broken English about Buddha and making wishes. I watched him buy flowers he didn't need from a girl who'd noticed his sadness. I stood there for 20 minutes watching her work. She was good at it, really good. She studied each customer, adapted her approach, found exactly the right combination of innocence and vulnerability to make them want to help her. When the German man left, clutching his lotus flowers and looking smitten, I approached her stall. "Hello, Malay." She looked up, startled. For just a moment, I saw fear in her eyes, fear that I'd expose her to potential customers. Then she composed herself. "Glenn," she said carefully, "what you doing here? I came to tell you that I'm leaving Thailand, going back to America." Something flickered across her face. Relief? Disappointment? I couldn't tell anymore. "When?" "Tomorrow." She nodded, arranging her flowers with unnecessary precision. "Probably best for you." "Is it?" "Yes," she said, not looking at me. "You too good for place like this. Too good for girl like me." "Maybe we were both too good for this," I said. She looked up then, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been real regret in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Glenn," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I wasn't who you needed me to be. I'm sorry I needed you to be someone you weren't," I replied. We looked at each other for a long moment, and I felt something that might have been closure. "Will you be okay?" I asked. She gestured around the temple, at her flowers and incense. "I always survive. Thai women, we know how to survive. Take care of yourself, Molly. You too, Glenn." I walked away without buying flowers, without looking back. But I could feel her watching me go, and I wondered if she was already planning her approach to the next lonely foreign man who would wander into her web. As I reached the temple gates, I heard her voice behind me, calling out to someone in broken English. "You want flowers for Buddha?" Very lucky, very beautiful flowers. I didn't turn around to see who she was talking to. I already knew exactly what I'd see. I'm back in Ohio now, sitting in my old apartment writing this story 6 months after I left Thailand. The snow is falling outside my window, and I can barely remember what the humidity felt like, what it was like to wake up every morning knowing I'd see Malay at the temple. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice leaving. Sometimes I think about buying a plane ticket back to Bangkok, finding her, trying one more time. But then I remember the calculation in her eyes when she realized I knew the truth. I remember the cold way she shrugged off my feelings like they were just another business expense. The hardest part isn't the betrayal. The hardest part is accepting how badly I wanted to be fooled. You see, what no one tells you about falling for a bar girl or a temple girl or whatever she decides to be's, that they're not just selling sex or companionship. They're selling you a version of yourself that you desperately want to believe in. They're selling you the story that you're different, that you're special, that you're the one who can save them. Malay studied me before I ever saw her. She watched me walk to that temple every morning for weeks, noticed my loneliness, my kindness, my need to feel useful. She crafted her entire personality around what I needed to see. The broken English that made me feel protective. The rough hands that suggested hard work. The shy smile that made me feel chosen. I wasn't falling in love with her. I was falling in love with my own reflection in her performance. My sister was right to worry when I called her that night, drunk on new love and possibility. "Glenn," she said, "you're in a vulnerable place. Just be careful." But I didn't want to be careful. I wanted to be reckless. I wanted to believe that love could find me anywhere, even in a place where love is just another commodity for sale. What nobody tells you is that the women who work this game aren't evil. They're not heartless monsters who enjoy destroying foreign men's lives. They're survivors in a system that gives them very few options. Malay was 25 years old in a country where the average wage is $300 a month. She could work in a factory for 12 hours a day and barely afford rent, or she could smile at lonely foreign men and make more in a week than most Thai people make in a year. I can't blame her for choosing survival over honesty, but I can't forgive her for being so good at it either. The money doesn't matter. I gave her maybe $8,000 over the course of our relationship, money I could afford to lose. It's not the financial loss that keeps me awake at night. It's the emotional audit I've been doing since I got back. How many of my memories are real? When she laughed at my jokes, was she really amused, or was she performing amusement? When she cried about her mother's illness, were those real tears for a real problem, or was she just that good at accessing emotion on demand? When she said she loved me, was there any part of her that meant it? I'll never know. That's what makes this type of betrayal so devastating. It doesn't just steal your present, it steals your past, makes you question every moment you thought was genuine. I've been going to therapy since I got back. Dr. Martinez, a kind woman in her 50s, who specializes in helping people recover from emotional manipulation, tells me that what I experienced has a name: romance fraud. She tells me it's more common than I think, that thousands of Western men fall for similar schemes every year. The shame is often worse than the heartbreak, she told me during our third session. Men especially struggle with admitting they were victims. She's right about the shame. I'm embarrassed that I fell for it. Embarrassed that I was so lonely and desperate for connection that I ignored obvious red flags. Embarrassed that I let myself believe a beautiful young woman could love a broken-down 62-year-old man for his personality. But I'm working on forgiving myself. Dr. Martinez says that the men who fall for these schemes aren't stupid or weak. They're just human. Lonely humans who want to believe in love, who want to feel needed and valued and chosen. Your capacity for hope isn't a weakness, she told me. It's what makes you human. Don't let this experience close your heart permanently. I'm trying to take her advice, but it's hard. Dating feels impossible now. Every woman I meet, I find myself analyzing her words for inconsistencies, watching for signs of performance. When someone shows interest in me, my first thought isn't gratitude or excitement, it's suspicion. What does she want? What's she really after? I know this isn't fair to the women I meet. Most people aren't professional manipulators. Most people don't craft elaborate lies to exploit loneliness. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. I've started volunteering at a local literacy center teaching adults to read. It helps. There's something honest about helping people learn, something straightforward about the exchange. I teach, they learn, everyone benefits. No hidden agendas, no performance, no emotional manipulation. Sometimes the students ask me about my time in Thailand. I tell them I lived there for a while, that it's a beautiful country with kind people. I don't tell them about Malay. I don't tell them how a 25-year-old woman convinced me that love could bloom in the most unlikely places, then systematically dismantled everything I thought I knew about myself. But I think about her sometimes. I wonder if she's still at the temple, still selling flowers to lonely foreign men. I wonder if she learned anything from our relationship, or if it was just another transaction in a long line of transactions. I wonder if she ever thinks about me. I hope she's okay. I hope she found a way out of that life, found something real and honest and sustainable. But I also hope she never hurts anyone the way she hurt me. I hope she learns that the money isn't worth the emotional damage she leaves behind. Because here's what I've learned. What I wish someone had told me before I got on that plane to Thailand. When you're running from pain, you're vulnerable to people who promise to heal it. When you're desperate for connection, you're susceptible to anyone who offers it, even if it's fake. The women who work this game know this. They can spot a lonely, divorced man from across a crowded temple. They know exactly what story to tell, what personality to become, what vulnerabilities to exploit. And the terrible truth is that it works because part of us wants to be exploited. Part of us wants to believe we're so special, so irresistible, that a beautiful young woman would fall head over heels for us despite the obvious imbalances in age, wealth, and power. We want to be the exception to the rule. We want to be the one foreign man who finds real love in a place where love is for sale. But there are no exceptions. There are only lonely men who mistake professional kindness for genuine affection, and young women who've learned to weaponize hope. I'm not saying all relationships between Western men and Thai women are scams. I know couples who met in Thailand and built real, lasting partnerships based on mutual respect and genuine connection. But those relationships start with honesty, not with elaborate fictional backstories designed to extract maximum sympathy and financial support. The real tragedy isn't that Malay lied to me. The real tragedy is that I was so starved for affection that I preferred her lies to the truth of my own loneliness. If you're reading this and you're thinking about retiring to Southeast Asia, if you're divorced or widowed or just tired of the dating scene back home, please learn from my mistake. Don't go looking for love in places where love is a business. Don't mistake professional emotional labor for genuine care. And if you do find yourself falling for someone who seems too good to be true, ask yourself the hard questions. Why would someone half your age be interested in you? What does she gain from this relationship? Are you solving her problems, or is she solving yours? Love shouldn't be a transaction. It shouldn't be based on one person's financial need and another person's emotional desperation. Real love is built on equality, honesty, and mutual benefit, not on the fantasy that you can save someone who doesn't actually need saving. I wasted 8 months of my life and $8,000 learning this lesson. But more than that, I wasted 8 months of my capacity for genuine connection on someone who was never really there. That's the real cost of falling for a professional. Not the money you lose, but the emotional energy you spend on a relationship that was never real. The dreams you build around someone who's building different dreams around you. The future you imagine with someone who's imagining their future without you. Malay taught me that loneliness makes us stupid. It makes us ignore red flags, rationalize inconsistencies, and choose comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. It makes us grateful for crumbs of affection from people who are feeding us carefully measured portions of fake intimacy. But loneliness also taught me something else. That I'd rather be alone and honest than together and deceived. That I'd rather face the truth of my own solitude than live in the fantasy of someone else's performance. I'm 63 now, and I may never find love again. That's a hard truth to accept, but it's better than the alternative. It's better than spending my remaining years being someone's retirement plan, someone's emergency fund, someone's ticket to a better life. If love finds me again, it will find me as I am. A flawed, lonely, but honest man who learned the difference between being wanted and being needed, between being chosen and being targeted. And if love doesn't find me, well, at least I'll know that my solitude is real. At least I'll know that the person in the mirror isn't performing for anyone's benefit but his own. That has to be enough. Because in places like Pattaya, in relationships built on inequality and desperation, enough never comes. There's always another emergency, another family crisis, another reason you need to prove your love with your wallet. There's always another performance, another version of the person you fell in love with, another lie dressed up as vulnerable honesty. The only way to win that game is not to play it at all. I learned that lesson 6,000 miles too late, but I learned it. And maybe that's worth something. Maybe that's enough.